Okay, I think it's managed to connect search engine optimization and stuff like that. So anything that you want the user to see, please put it inside of the body tag of your HTML page. Yeah. So is there a better, more descriptive tag now available in modern HTML to describe my menu? Yeah, okay, so we could use some sort of header section inside of the body. Wasn't exactly what I was thinking of, but yes, there is. You say again? Nav, yes. There's now a tag called nav, yeah, for navigation, short for navigation. So it makes sense to me, if you're creating a menu, to use the nav tag. Notice I've opened one and I've closed one. If I want to give it an ID, I can call it navigation, for example, so I can style it later on. We could create a list of menu items, right? That's how we used to do it and how it's still often done. We create a list of all of those menu options that we want to display at the top of our page. We've got two ways of creating lists in HTML. What ways are they? Lists, yeah. Yeah, so there's an unordered list and there's an ordered list. So you would write an unordered list using the UL tag and an ordered list. Anyone have a guess? Who doesn't know, but yeah, OL, yeah, for an ordered list. What's the difference?
One is numbered, one is bulleted.
One is numbered, one is bulleted. Which one is numbered?
OL.
Ordered list, exactly, yeah, cool. So that is like a container for all of my list items. And if I just wanted to have, let's say, an unordered list for now, how would I actually create one of my titles? Can I just now write in here, let's say I'm doing a portfolio and I want to write some projects. I want to write an about me. What do? Do I just do like separated by commas? How do I structure it? Cool. Yeah, so inside of my lists, I can do list containers, I can do an li element, yeah? And again, I think this is where emit comes in useful. What was it to begin with? Was it you do that, you do li, and then we can do like a times 4, for example? Was that? No, not that. I can't remember the shortcuts now. But yeah, essentially if you look at emit, then rather than writing li, or copy and pasting, you could tell it how many li elements you wanted, and it would create all of those for you. All right, so let's try and give it a little bit of structure. What elements in my list should we have? You want it about me, about us, yeah? Or about, yeah, say about me for a project page, for a portfolio page. And maybe you want to showcase your projects as well, so you could just write your projects. And let's have a quick look at this. I think there's a little mistake in there, right? So am I missing a tag anywhere? Yep, so I haven't closed my unordered list. Now I've got both. Cool. That's a different page. If I just wanted to display that in the browser, what could I do? Do I have to run a server? Do I have to do anything like that? Or just double click it, right? Yeah, it's a HTML file, so our browsers can interpret and read those. We don't need to run a server. We don't need to run a node environment. This is just as simple as can be, right? Just working with plain old HTML files. So yeah, open it in Google Chrome, and we should see just a couple of objects there for our list. Yeah, they come with these bullet points, and I assume that you don't want a bullet pointed menu. So that's when we have to use it in combination with something else. HTML is just the structure of our page. To get the style, to change the colors, to change the layout, we need to use what? CSS, exactly, right. So how would I get rid of those bullet points? Does anyone know?
List style type.
List style type. Do we agree, guys? Let me just get into the same folder. So I could just call this for now styles.css. And let's say I want to style my list items. So how am I going to select those list items from my page? Yeah, for now we can just use the li tag, right? So really, really low specificity. And you said what? Sorry, list.
List style type, none.
So again, you've got these things to help you if you can't exactly remember the name of the attribute, the name of the CSS attribute, and we've got a few options: list style image, list style position, list style type. So you said list style type, and then also it gives you all of the options that you can have for your list style type. So the default is it disk or circle? Circle, right? But we could play around with all of these different styles, and one of them is none if you just want to display the text. So if you clicked on that, okay, so we've written the code that will change the list items, but is that going to have any effect yet?
No, she haven't linked the style sheet.
No. So if you remember, was there one in here? No. So there was one. So script one. I thought I had an example for you earlier. All right, but how do I include a CSS file in a HTML document in a link tag? So this was something like this. So where does that go? In the head section, exactly. It doesn't go in the body. We don't want the user to see, oh, this guy's just included this style sheet. We don't want them to see that. We want it to work. We want our page to incorporate those styles, but we don't want to display that to the user. So does it really matter where it goes? Not really. So our link under the REL, what goes under the REL?
Style sheet.
Style sheet, yeah, that is what it is. It's a CSS style sheet. And the href.
If it's in the same folder, can't you just put like style.css or whatever it's called?
Absolutely. So we called it styles.css, so we just used need. Oh right, yeah. So if I change the name and make them both correct, if they're both wrong, it will still work, of course. But let's try and be st. Yeah, fantastic. STYLES. Cool. So now any styles that we have defined in that style sheet are going to be applied to our HTML page, right? And now, because we've set list styles to none, and we go back, refresh the page, they have disappeared. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's how you just work with basic HTML and CSS. Has everyone done that before? Just the basics? No. So there's a few no's at least, yeah? So if you weren't using React and you just wanted to create a very basic page, this might be the way that you did it in the past, you know, without any frameworks when you were just learning. And there's nothing wrong with just building basic snippets and files like this still. But hopefully you will agree, as you start to build more complex applications and you start having backends and connecting to databases and all these sorts of things, that using some build tools or some libraries such as React will enable you to just build a project in an easier and more structured way. So the equivalent would be in our app.js or in our JS file, we just do import and the name of the file, right? That's what we've achieved with that line. Very similar to in our emit.html using the link tag here instead. Yeah, so those two are effectively doing the same thing. They're doing them in different ways. One's doing using JavaScript modules, one's doing it using a HTML link tag, but the end result is the same. Yeah? Cool. Any questions? Nope, fairly basic. Good stuff. So the last thing I want to do is just mention that search engines, when they're rating your site, one of the things that they will look at is what sort of markup you've used. And one of the things that they don't like is just divitis, right? Divs everywhere. As I said before, if we're doing a menu item, we could have definitely just put that inside of a div. But why not put it inside a nav bar? It clearly explains to the user, explains to the Google web crawler when it crawls your site that this section's the navigation bar, and I can clearly see you've got other sections of your site, and I know what their intent is. So we call that semantic HTML. And in HTML5, there are a lot more semantic tags released. So try and use them when you can. I will introduce a few of them now. So here we've got a case of divitis in our code. And we can probably improve it quite a bit. So hopefully you can get an idea of what some of these divs are meant to be doing or what section they're meant to be containing. So if you could just give me the line number and then a possible improvement that we could make to that code to make it more semantic, make it more obvious what section is doing each thing, then that would be great. Which one? Number one. So we can see that it's got an ID of header, so that probably we could actually, rather than calling it a div, call it a header. Where does it end? There, right, I think. Okay. How about the navigation? We covered that one already. Nav. Oh, not nav. What's the A tag do for those that are very new to HTML? Yeah, A stands for anchor, and that will be the links. So one of the original purposes of HTML, right? It was just for sharing documents. Yeah, developed by Tim Berners-Lee. All they wanted to do was share documents. So the hyperlink is what the whole web was built around. Yeah, the anchor tag is how we create our hyperlinks. And we can give them either external references to other sites or relative references to navigate to a different page within our site. Cool. So, anything else? There's another ID here of main. That's actually a tag as well. And you're only meant to have one of those per page, yeah? It's to highlight the main section of your page. So the whole purpose of your page, what it's all about, should go in here. The nav might be repeated across lots and lots of pages. But the main, there should just be one main that changes per page. So again, you can just do main. Any other keywords that are jumping out at you there? So article as well. Yeah, that's one. So you could change all of these divs here to article. Footer, yeah, footer's one as well. So each section can actually have a header and a footer. It doesn't have to just literally be the very top of the page and the very bottom of the page. Each section, so section is another tag that you could give it. Don't think we've necessarily got any sections here, so we've got main, and probably just got articles. Oh no, article section, yep, so you could definitely have section there. And each section, if you wanted, could have its own header and footer. Yeah, it doesn't have to be just one per HTML page, but things like the main and the nav, it makes sense just to have one. And the main is actually enforced. You should only have one. You'll get penalized otherwise. Yeah, things like address. If you're actually listing an address or you're using React to map an address to the page, then again, there is an address tag as well. Email, yeah. So we can be a lot more descriptive just from our HTML of what our file contains. So if you think there's another option, then please use them. As to a list of the things that exist, then again, W3 Schools is probably one of the best resources. I'll send you a link to this website as well, which is where I got the example from. And just Googling semantic HTML as well will help you write more descriptive HTML.
They have the same number as divs, so divs are 10. All these semantic tags.
Is a div 10? It's one, right? Each tag is just one. So it doesn't matter what the tags are called. Yeah, they're still as specific. It doesn't change the CSS specificity, but it is better for SEO, right? Search engine optimization. As well as that, all your different tags often come with, well, they do. It's up to the browser implementation, but they come with default styles. So when you use a header, so you can use different types of headers, H1 through to H6, to show some titles on your page or show some headers on your page. H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest, but they come with these default styles. Now, depending on your application, you might not want that. You might just want to use a H1 to display some bigger text. But you've also got these margins, you know, margin top, margin bottom, and you might not understand why things aren't lining up properly. And that's because a lot of tags come with CSS styles built into them. So you can not necessarily delete them, but you reset them, yeah? So you might have heard of CSS Resets. So if you Google CSS Resets, it will come up with lots of different tools that you can use to make sure that all of your elements start from a blank slate. So what you might see in a lot of CSS files, CSS file gone. At the very top, you might see some sort of reset for each element. And one of the common ones is margin, 0, padding, 0. And that will make sure that all of these inbuilt styles, if they had any margin or padding, it will reset them to 0. Yeah?
Would you recommend us doing that at the start of any project?
Personally, yes,
Yeah.
because if I don't, I find that I forget some of these default styles, and then things are not aligned and they're shifted all over the place. And I think, I'm not a designer myself. I mean, if you're a designer, you probably have other solutions. But for me, this really works where I'm just mocking up a page. And one of the more preferred ways to design now as well, I think Ricardo mentioned talking about borders and padding, and he was saying if you had like a width 100% or something like that on an element, but then you also had, it was with the flexbox, right? He said 25% if we had 4 columns, but he also had a border there, so we couldn't actually fit 4 columns. It went down to the next row. Yeah. Say again.
There's some code written by probably some software developer, so we can just link them with the apps, and I mean it will reset the whole CSS.
Yeah, absolutely. We can use other CSS style sheets that have been written by other people, and they will reset these things for you. But coming back to the point I was making about the columns, then if we want to include the borders and the padding and stuff like that inside of our 25% for each element, there is a way to do that. So there's a CSS property called box sizing and that has a few values. One of them is border box, and if you use border box, it means that any borders get included inside of that 25% value. Yeah, so if we use border box and then we gave our 25% width items a border, it would not push that fourth one down onto the next line. Yeah, so that's one of the resets I like to do as well. The default is content box, which adds the padding onto the width, but box sizing border box will make it so that the borders and the padding are included in the width that you set it. Yeah, so that's an easier way for me to design, because then when I set the width of something, I know it stays at that width. Yeah. So often you'll have CSS resets that do something like that. You might see ones for the images specifically, making them 100% width and height. I don't know whether some of you had the problem with the images and you'd set a container and you could only see part of the image. Yeah, so if you just set all of your images to something like width 100%, and the same for the height, then that will make sure that it inherits the width and the height of the parent container. So if you put it inside of a div and you've said this div is a certain size, then the image itself will get resized to the size of the container. So I often have that in all my style sheets as well, no matter what I'm doing. Yeah. Cool. I will send you the list for the default styles and the emit links for when working with HTML and CSS. Any general questions on HTML and CSS, or what you found useful when working with them for the people in the room that haven't used much HTML and CSS? Nothing? No questions? No? Okay, cool. So I'll stop it there.